your moderator for the next 45 minutes. My name is Ginny Smith. The title on my books, the name on my books is Virginia Smith, which is the most common author name in the entire world. So when you get that first contract, talk to somebody who knows what they're doing before you sign it. Otherwise, I would have a different name. Anyway, I write, my 33rd novel just came out in January, but only one of mine are science fiction and fantasy. I write cozy mysteries, I write romantic suspense, I write chick books, I do, you know. So I write in a different genre, which is why they let me be the moderator, because, you know, these are the guys that you all read. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have each of these gentlemen introduce themselves, and to start off, why don't you tell us your name and tell us what book you're shilling this weekend, okay? We'll start with Johnny down here, because he's not at a lack for words.
I'm Johnny Worthen, and I'm an wrong meeting. I'm Johnny Worthen. I'm a multi-genre author. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. I studied feminist theory, Marxist theory, literary criticism, cultural criticism. I teach at the University of Utah. I have 7 novels in print, traditionally published. I know you're going to ask me that.
And you need to talk louder.
And I need to talk louder, which I don't hear very often. Bless your heart. I'm shilling this week my new theological thriller horror called What Immortal Hand, which was released. It is fantastic. It's written by my favorite author. And I'm just darn happy to be here. I live for writing.
I like this guy.
I like her for saying that.
And this is Brandon. Brandon, tell us about yourself and your full name.
Do you think you could ask people if they have an empty seat next to them to let other people know? So
Yeah, if there's an empty seat, raise your hand, and if you all want to vacate the floor, or you can stay where you are. One up here in the front.
It's kind of a fire code hazard if we have people lining the walls.
That's true. So try to find a seat. There's one right here. If your name is Heather, you can have it.
We also have a lot of oily rags underneath the seats. Oil rags.
Okay, now let's return to Brandon Malt.
Okay, so I'm Brandon Mull, and I write fantasy adventure stuff in the middle grade category. I describe it as Harry Potter middle grade because it kind of gets read by everybody a little bit. I write a series called Fablehaven and Beyonders and stuff like that. When I'm here, probably my next book to come out, I'm not selling it yet, but that'll be 5 Kingdoms book 5. That's the finale book for my 5 Kingdoms series. If you're the kind of person that waits till it's over, this is a good time to start. It'll be out in March, it's done, I promise, it's official, like it's just being printed or whatever. And then I also have a sequel series to Fablehaven called Dragon Watch. That's my latest book to come out. And there'll be more of those over the next few years. I'll be writing that.
All right, so he's shilling the first in the series because number 5's coming out.
Yeah, I guess I'm actually shilling the first one.
Okay, there you go. There you go. All right, so we're talking about writing the opposite gender. And so I guess, and I have a lot of opinions about this, but I'm going to try to only sprinkle them throughout and let these guys do a lot of talking as well. But to start out, I guess what I'd like, my question for you all is, what are the differences that a writer has to watch for? I mean, what are the cliches, or what are you watching for when you are writing a character that is female? You know, I guess I do have like a unique point of view on this panel since I am the female of it. But when you're writing a woman, okay, what do you want?
Sharing ideas.
Let's not throw labels around.
No. Which is one of my points. But anyway, go ahead. So tell me, Brandon, what do you
For me,
to try to make sure you do not do when you're writing a woman?
okay, so this is something that I have philosophized about because, you know, like right now I'm a 43-year-old guy. My main, probably if I had to pick a single main character in Fablehaven, it's Kendra. She's got a co-main character who's Seth. So I'm a 43-year-old guy trying to be a 13-year-old girl, or a 15-year-old girl, I guess now in Dragon Watch, right? And like, part of me goes like, do you have any right to try to do this, right? So here's the problem that I think about, and the thing I most worry about is someone comes to me and goes, how are you going to write a 15-year-old girl? And I go, well, how are you going to write a 43-year-old guy? if you're going to generalize what a 43-year-old guy is or what a 15-year-old girl is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you're like, how are you going to write a 15-year-old girl? I'm like, well, like, you basically just can't. Like, do 15-year-old girls understand 15-year-old girls? No, they don't. And does a 43-year-old guy understand 43-year-old guys as a whole? No. Like because everybody's different, right? And so the first thing that I try to approach is I'm not writing a symbol of all 15-year-old girls, right? Like I'm writing a 15-year-old girl.
Right.
And probably the most important thing that I have to do as a writer is write a 15-year-old girl, and that means I make up a certain specific 15-year-old girl who thinks a certain way and feels a certain way and is a certain type of person. And so like, she does not have to embody every stereotype I have about 15-year-old girls. She does not have to embody every generality about women. She's just a 15-year-old girl that I need to get to know really well and try to bring to life. And that's the first thing I think hard about.
Excellent answer.
Yeah.
He's leaning toward where I was trying to lead this thing. But now, for a different opinion, Johnny, tell us when do you start out writing a character? Are there cliches you're trying to avoid, or what?
Well, I tend to start my stories writing to a theme, so I have an idea I'm trying to explore. My most famous female character is Eleanor from the Unseen series, and she is a... Who did that? That's gone. And in Eleanor, she is a 16-year-old girl hiding in plain sight, but I very much needed to explore the idea of a power relationship in this situation. I think there are two problems we run into when we're trying to write the other, whether it's the other gender or the other race or the other religion. And the first thing is treating them differently because of it. And the other is not treating them differently because of it. So in my thinking of writing this character, I wanted a low person on the totem pole, if you will. I needed somebody poor. I needed somebody powerless. I needed somebody that people will ignore. And because of the power relationships, at least in Western society, it was natural for me to go with a female who is young, who is impoverished. Because I knew it by the end of the series, this would be reversed, is that I was dealing with an apex predator eventually, but in order to hide and be invisible in the society, you had to be this way. And so when I wrote the character, I wrote pretty much the idea of what her position was in her society. The female parts, that's poorly phrased.
Very good phrase. The jury will please excuse that last name.
But the feminine idea just comes from imagining the situation. Luckily, I have nieces and nephews, mostly nieces in this case, who I modeled them after. I think the biggest lie you're going to find in any book is no character in this book is based on anybody living event. That's the biggest bunch of bullshit ever written. So everybody's got a predecessor, everybody's somebody. And so by using that, I could fit them into the situation. But the problems would be avoiding the cliche, not making them, not treating them differently, and yet knowing that they are different. And it's a precarious situation, but I think if you can actually imagine yourself into the situation, that's where the power to create it comes from.
Very good. I got to piggyback off of that just because it reminded me of something that's kind of related to this topic. I wrote a book once about and like I said, I write contemporary, so it was about this girl who goes to visit her grandmother who is a super control freak and a guilt dispenser and manipulator. And when I finished the book, my sister read it and she said, "Oh, I cannot believe you wrote Mom into this book." And when my mother read it, she said, "Oh, I'm so glad your grandmother's already passed on." So, honestly, this is very true that we write what we know because that's how we resonate with people, that's how we can create characters that resonate, but they don't always recognize themselves. I have heard it said that the writers, the challenge isn't necessarily in writing a different genre, it's in writing a different type of character than yourself. And since we are at LTUE, and therefore we think science fiction and fantasy, my mind goes to men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So I guess my question to you is, how is writing a a different character, a woman, similar to writing a non-human or an alien.
Pretty much the same. So when you have an orc and you have my what? No.
Yeah.
Is that recording? I think it all comes down to empathy. The most powerful tool a writer has, there are two of them, and they're related, is that it's an open mind for impressions and an imagination that encourages empathy. If you cannot empathize with your character, if you cannot find yourself into their skin and imagine it, I think you're crippled as a writer. So that is why you must always go in with an open mind and be able to empathize with it. Those of you who have any acting experience, who have ever actually taken into a character and become a character, I think are far ahead. Who has acting experience, thespian experience? Who has thespian experience that they don't want to talk about because it's under a different name? But that's the idea. You actually have to inhabit the character or have the character inhabit you with the imagination on that, in which case it's true under any circumstance.
What do you think, Brandon?
So for me, one of the differences between me writing a guy and me writing a girl is, on one, I'm having to rely a little bit more on observation than personal experience. Does that make sense? You could maybe guess why. But I am a guy, and so there's certain things that I've experienced firsthand about being a guy that I haven't been a girl. It's never happened. And so, but when you say an empathy, like when I try to describe where the writing comes from, I describe it as a mix of observation and daydreaming. Right? For me, writing is a mix of observation and daydreaming. I pay attention to the world around me, and that's my raw ingredients, and then I daydream about those raw ingredients, and I daydream about the details that strike me or are interesting to me, and that could be people or places or facts, or it could be things I read in a fantasy book or saw in a movie. It all just becomes compost in my head from which stories can grow out of, right? Part of that mix of observation and daydreaming is trying to pay attention to the women around me so I can write women, right? I don't do it deliberately, necessarily. Like, I'm going to write women well, so I'm going to make a friend who's a girl. You know what I mean? It's not, it's not like that. But like, I've dated women, I've got sisters, I've got daughters, and so like, I've got a mom, right? And so like, I've spent a lot of time around women. It's all right there for me to see, if I have eyes to see and ears to hear and try to figure it out. She connected it to something else, which is a very strange part about what I do, which is not only do I write about, because it's so famous, right? Write what you know, right? Write what you, it's like an old saw. It's like one of the most primary old things in writing. And I write books about goblins and dragons.
I have children.
And stuff. That's good. And it's funny because we do tend to draw from that for our goblins and our dragons because we don't know goblins and dragons. You know what I mean? Like so my job becomes, can I make this goblin feel authentic, right? And like that's sort of weird when you're like, wait, write what you know. How do you do it? But it's kind of similar to writing a woman too, like in that, like, okay, I've never been a woman. I've never been a woman, I've never been a goblin, I've never been a dragon, I've never been an ogre, I've never been 70. Like there's lots of things I've never been that I gotta just fake it the best I can and try to use observation and imagination to try to bring something to life that people go, oh, okay, I believe that. I believe that that's like the same way I want them to go, I believe that's a 30-year-old guy, or the same way I want them to go, I believe that's a 14-year-old girl. I also want them to go, I believe that demon is 2,000 years old and on his deathbed and real, right? Like we're trying to sell something that we're not. And you have to do it so much. It's one of the hardest things you do as a writer is try to make a diversity of characters feel like they're not all growing out of the same source, the same head, right? It's one of the hardest things we do.
I agree.
If I could
Sure.
comment on that. First of all, not being a woman, who are the Rocky Horror Picture Show people again? Second, I had the mom, I think, I don't know where this is, but I really want to say this, is I've had this conversation with many authors across the spectrum. And I think in many ways, you correct me if I'm wrong, that I think some women have a harder time writing men than men have writing women. And I will tell you why.
Okay.
Because I think most men have a mother that they love and adore. And father figures are not usually that certain. I actually have a harder time writing sympathetic men because of my own personal experiences with my father. And yet, I can empathize and sympathize and love and adore a female character because I had a lovely mother. I have a lovely mother. And my father and I have not got along. Single parent, that kind of thing. So for me, it's been more difficult, and I have to take my cues from I don't know, Tom Cruise, somewhere else, because to me that's what is brought into me. I mean, they say that if you had a beautiful upbringing with two kind, loving parents and siblings that got along, you'll never be a writer. You got nothing to work through.
We're all about conflict. I mean, that's what a good story is about. You know, two answers to that, or two responses to that. Number one, I read as I was preparing for this session, I read something in the Huffington Post. It was an article that said that in general, this writer, this journalist, said that they thought women wrote men better than men wrote women. So that was exactly the opposite. And she went on to, it was a she, and she went on to cite several examples of books that were non-genre books, and I hadn't read them, so it didn't really stick in my mind. But that's interesting that you said the exact opposite. But on the second hand, I agree with what you just said. I wrote a series once. It was, again, not genre. It was called the Sister to Sister series, and it was about 3 20-something young women whose father had deserted them when they were early teens and, like 10, 12 years old. And here they were trying to form relationships with a man. They're trying to find the love of their life, and who do we base that on? We base that on how we've been treated by our dad. So you're absolutely right. That was the huge driving force of each of the 3 of those novels, was how do they overcome that, their perception of how a man treats a woman, or how they were treated. So I totally agree with that. I'm not sure I agree with the men do it better than women.
Well,
yeah.
I only have my own to deal with.
Well, it's fun because we can apply it's hard to generalize to the whole thing, right? Because there's probably some women who do it better, and there's some men who do it, you know what I mean? It's probably a little hard to generalize if all women are going to write a man better than all men would write a woman. That's probably not true, right?
Yeah,
it's just
no,
gonna
I think
depend
you're
on
right.
the personal skill set.
How much does research play into it? And I'll tell you, my very first novel, and this wasn't man versus woman, it's a first person from a young woman's perspective, but there was a character in there named Tattoo Lou. I don't have any ink on my body, and this was written in 2005, and this guy was tattooed head to toe. And so I actually went and met people that were tattooed head to toe and talked to them about their love of ink and so on. Do you, and this wasn't necessarily because he was a guy, it was because I really did not understand that mentality.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd that at the time my son had no tattoos, and now he could be Tattoo Jonathan. But so do you ever do you take that approach? Do you take a research approach to, oh my gosh, how would a woman, let me talk to somebody, how would you react to this situation? Brandon, do you do
Want
that?
me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because he talked more the last time, so it's just
For research, right? Almost all my research comes from life happening, unless I have a very specific question. Like the thing you did with the tattoos is the kind of thing where I would do research. If it was something very specific, where there was knowledge already existing, like for example, if I did a castle in a book, I'll research castles, so I know what the stuff's called, what the thingies are called, right? The battlements and whatnot. Yeah, right. Because in my head they're the thingies until I learn all the words, right? What's a knight's elbow pad called? That kind of thing. There's an answer to that. You get the book out and you find out what his shin guard's called. And because I call it a shin guard in my head, but it's like a greave or something, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I'll do research for specifics. So much of my writing kind of has to come from my gut when I'm doing my characters, and so a lot of it is the informal research of living life and trying to pay attention to people around me. And that's a big part of it. I am trying to be conscious though, because I don't want it to clang for a reader, right? I don't want him to go, this doesn't feel like a woman. This doesn't. I don't want that to happen. As I give it to readers, because when I give it to readers, I give it to women, I give it to men. I sometimes try to give it to my kids even now that they're getting older, and like I'm definitely listening for. Oh, this doesn't feel like what a woman would do. Like if I hear anything like that, my radar's up. You know what I mean? Like I don't hear it super often. There are occasions where I will now ask my daughter, what would you feel about this? Or what would you do? Or what makes somebody cute to you? Or like I'll start to ask those kind of things, which is so weird as a dad. I'm sure it's like stressful for her, right? But like I'm starting to mind my kids a little bit just for like some basic psychology stuff. But like does this hurt? But I don't think it's something you can totally, like to me, maybe to someone else. To me, I'm not sure it's something you can figure out with like a graph or something. You know what I mean? Like with like empirical research on this is what a woman is. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure I can get enough facts to like this computes. This is woman. You know what I mean? Like to me, so much of writing in general, it's art, not science, right? And this thing of like writing the other gender. It is partly feel, right? It is partly art. It is partly like, I've known a lot of women. Does this feel like one of them? You know what I mean? Does this feel like a woman? Does this feel like a man? Like it's going with my gut. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it's functionally, it's how I do it.
That's how it works for him. How about you?
Well, I've been impressed. I think people writing women 50 years ago had a real problem because the narratives that they were exposed to did not have accurate women. Right. The men had dominated movies, film, radio, all this, and the women that we saw there, even in Agatha Christie, they're really shallow nothings, you know? And then lately in modern era with rise of feminism and many great female writers, is that now we are actually exposed to strong, well-rounded female characters. And so although we are constantly absorbing this information from our own circle of friends who might be more limited than Ally McBeal, but they're still, we have new things to draw from. I don't know at what point in American civilization, probably suffragette, that women, we decided that women were people too. Gosh, we just did it, you know? Let's just call it. And ever since then, we've had this good, we have a continuing narrative that the female authors no longer have to hide behind pseudonyms as much. J.K. Rowling, possibly exception to this term, but
she thought so.
She thought so, right? So. And yet, it is good. It is outstanding to get these other voices in there because it is a way. Because when you read a book, I mean, if you don't read books,
why are you here?
But the psychology shows that when you read a book, your synapses fire as if you've had the experience yourself. Right. Reading is not a passive endeavor, right? It's playing it on your mind. Your mind needs to do this. So after you read a book, it is as if you've had that experience yourself. Your brain has fired off. So if you're reading good books with good female characters, it is as if you have met this good female character, and it is now part of your world. So I would, if to write the other, experience the other, and if you're afraid to actually ask her for a date, what you want to do is you want to read good literature about women, by women. Get the other voices. Get out of your comfort zone and do that. And that's actually where a lot of this stuff that just kind of is absorbed into it. Because I don't think anybody comes in and say, okay, I need a super villain who wears a bra. No, that's not how it works. You need to have the full character first and then the function later.
Yeah, and I guess it's a little, my perspective is a little bit different, not because I'm a woman, but because of the genres that I have written. I have written straight romance, not the steamy, sexy, otherwise I'd be rich because mine are clean. So nobody reads them. But when you write romance, part of the formula is you show a romance developing where you have two viewpoint characters. One's the female, one's the male, and you alternate and you show the romance from each perspective. So when I first started, actually when I got my contract request for the first romance, the publisher contacted me and said, would you write this romance novel? And I'm going, I don't read that crap. I mean, you know, no, I don't know how to do that. And so you know, I did some research. I did. I read some romance novels and dissected them and diagrammed them. And then I read the book aloud to my husband. And my husband actually did say, a guy would never think that. He would, sorry, we don't think about that. All we think about sex. Really and truly, you know, which made it really difficult for me since I wasn't supposed to write sex into it. But, you know, that's...
Well, that's not true. Sometimes we're hungry.
Okay, I will take your word for it. Okay, now that I've said the S word, which I notice we have not said throughout this entire thing, I have said the S word. I read a commentator on the internet that said this: sex is biological, it's something you're born with, but gender is cultural, it's something you're taught. Therefore, writing about gender is always going to be political.
Agreed.
What do you think about that? I want to hear what you think.
I think it's absolutely true. This is a moment of upheaval, and where people are beginning to express this. I've always considered this, and all right, bring out the tar and feathers, is that people's attraction is on a scale. It's on a scale. Not every man is attracted to every woman, not every woman's attracted to every man. There are certain pieces in the scale, and sometimes it goes over one way or another. How we see ourselves is a political decision as much as anything. And so when we're talking about writing gender, it is no longer, strictly speaking, a man writing a woman or just male and female, but there are other, should we say, facets of this, which now need to be understood. And this, it should not be, and it needs, and it's a hot topic. And so on the one hand, it'll get you noticed. It'll also get you pilloried. So it is something that you must go in with an open mind and be as accurate and as truthful as possible to this, because this is actually probably the civil rights movement of our time right now. So it's important to, if you're going to play in these, if you're going to swim in these waters, to be as accurate and as truthful and as open-minded as possible. And so I definitely agree with that. Okay,
all right. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, so gay characters, I haven't ever done it in my books, and it's partly like, again, my writing is a mix of observation and daydreaming. I don't have a ton of like gay role models in my life, and so it's sort of like how I haven't had a main character that's like a black dad, because like I'd get really scared if I faked it wrong. Does that make sense? And so there's certain things that I'm aware of, and I'm also kind of careful of. Like it's tricky. Like in my characters, I've had characters that were black, but I don't feel like I can go into like, can I go into their home and see exactly what that looks like and feels like? Like it's like the Cosby Show is all I got. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Not a good example.
Lots of sweaters, and, you know. But like when I say that, it's like there is a fear of not being authentic. Right. Right. Like I want to feel like I can be authentic to a goblin because nobody knows a goblin. Right. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no goblin family that's like, goblins aren't like that. There's just not. But there could be like a Korean family that's like, this guy has never had a Korean friend. Like they're like, look at this. Like there's things that are obvious that he doesn't. And so like I'm probably most sensitive about things like that, things that I feel like I don't know as well, right? Like, and so I would just be. I'm aware of it, and I am careful of it. Like I don't want to like go in there and be like the outsider screwing up what this looks like. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Well, quick question, but since you have a bully pulpit and everyone reads your books, who hasn't read it? You. No, they're fantastic.
Close your eyes. They didn't.
Could you have? What have you ever thought of I don't want to call it a token, but as put a character in there as just there, like Dumbledore's gay.
Yeah.
Would that be something? No, you rolled your eyes. He's gay.
Oh, I know, but
I was looking at you. It wasn't her.
Oh.
You were talking. No. No, but that's something else. Now, obviously, it can't be in the central way. But what if it's just done in passing to acknowledge the fact that such a thing could happen? I often put gay characters in there, but on the other hand, I am more uncomfortable doing black characters or very ethnically defined characters. I have a lot of friends who are LGBTQ, and I have much more comfort with that from my own experience. But I will still throw a character in because I want a greater mix, because this is who I want my character to be with. I don't know. I mean, it's something that, is there a social responsibility, Brad?
Yeah, I don't know, like on the sense of like gay people exist. And so should I have a gay people, like I would theoretically put it in a gay character, in theory, right? Like I would be scared to have it be just a token. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like to be just a token feels weird.
I'd be afraid of that too.
To be like not a main character, but like to do a main character and have the confidence. To do a token character feels like it's like this like little nod, like I'm shunning it. You know what I mean? So it is tricky for me. Like an example that I could say is I have a Samoan uncle. And so I put a Samoan character as a big character in Feywild. Because like there I was like, okay, I'd been close to him long enough that I kind of had the vibe. And I felt like I could get my head around it. And I feel like I did a good job with Tawny, the Samoan character in Feywild. And that's not like, again, he doesn't have to represent every Samoan, right? But I didn't want him to be like, Samoans go, he represents no Samoans. I didn't want a Samoan reader to go, this guy's like not like a Samoan at all. You know what I mean? And that would be my word. Like you say, you've got friends in that community, and like I have a couple friends who are gay, and so I've got a little bit to draw from direct experience, but I feel like I don't have a lot to draw from direct experience, and so I think I would need to learn more. I feel like I'm not quite there yet. I wouldn't want to do a disservice by that. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to do it in a fake way or in a way that felt, I don't know, where I didn't want to do it in a way where I feel like I'm faking it.
So it's artistic grounds, rather than political grounds.
Well, yeah, like I just don't want to do a bad job of it, right? Does that
I
make
feel the
sense?
same way about, I tend to be that way about black characters because I'm not really sure how to, it's not that I can't identify with the character, because my goal in writing a character is to, regardless of, gender or sex or whatever, it's to make them unique, to make them relatable. But I had a black character once, and I was unsure how to describe this character. Do you describe them as black? Because that's what that's part of a physical appearance. And then my editor said, yeah, you want to be careful about this. So now I'm just like, okay, I'm careful.
It's so tricky because you're like,
it's a real concern.
You're like, did I describe my other characters as all white?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, son of a gun. You know what I mean? Like I'm accidentally creating a sense of otherness sometimes in my descriptions.
And that's well stated.
And for me, that's the tricky thing. For me, there is otherness because I come from like a Caucasian family, but that doesn't mean I don't like black people. Like I have some friends that are black, and like I just don't feel like here's somebody black. And
exactly.
But look at the stinking room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are not a lot of black people in this room, and there's not a lot of black people in my neighborhood.
This state.
And like.
This is Utah.
Yeah,
you should say that. This is Utah.
That's what I was gonna say. This is Utah.
Yes, this is Utah. Okay.
But wait, I gotta finish this off because I'm telling you the truth. Like I would only want to do it in a positive way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, cause like, do I wish I had more friends who were black? Like, yeah, just because like there's an absence of that, and like I feel like there's something missing in my mix, kind of. You know what I mean? Like I wish I knew more about. Like I wish I could write a black dad because I had a friend with a black dad. I just don't have it in my toolbox, right? And so it's like, it's that tricky thing of like, I would hate for this man right here to think you're not putting a character that's black as a main character because I don't like black people. Like that's not it. Like does that come across when I say that?
I totally get what you're saying.
Like for me, it would just be like.
Yeah.
It would be like.
Well, it's important.
It's almost like fear that I'll do a disservice, or I'll do it wrong, or I'll do it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't know, man.
How many college students we got here? Are they still teaching good ethnic classes there, ethnic studies classes? And, those I found invaluable in my college.
Because it's part of research, right?
Yeah, part of
research. But it's so dumb. I wish it was like not research. I wish it was because like, oh, I got this great friend. But I've got this so-and uncle, and now I'm comfortable with it because I know him well enough. You know what I mean?
I think I want to read this. This is a quote by George R.R. Martin, who was once asked about this topic. He says, the main thing is empathy and saying, how would I feel? Because male or female, the character is still a person. That is so exactly how I approach, I don't care if they are men or women, I want my characters to be unique. And so what I say is not how would a man react to this statement or this situation, but how would character X react to this situation. Is that basically what we're saying here?
Exactly. I found sometimes I read slush piles. I'm an acquisitions editor for a small press, and one of the slush piles came by, and it was a 60-year-old man writing a young adult story about this girl, and he went into her first period, and I just kind of got wigged out on this because although this, it's I don't know where he got his information. I showed it to my wife, and she said, no, I wouldn't do this. And so, but it's tricky. So you have to have your limits. If you're only defining your character on that, I think you're in trouble. They have to have empathy. There's still people. How do you write a female character? George Warren's film science. Well, I treat them as people.
They're people. Yeah.
And that's kind of where it comes from. But you cannot just assume that that's the difference. I'll never forget that.
I agree with that. Okay.
Best rejection letters ever.
We have about 5 minutes, so I tend to talk and ask too many questions, but let's take some from you guys.
Well, just kind of from the discussion, it seems like we're just so worried about political correctness, about not offending people in our writing or whatever. And I just wonder, like, what's your opinion on that? Because to me, I never want to hurt anyone or offend anyone, but I just want to be authentic to who I am as a writer. And to heck with political correctness.
I think I probably led the conversation that way with the question about sex and politics. So,
like, I know you have to be sensitive to people and how they feel, but like, shouldn't you just be true to who you are as a person and as a writer, and then just let the ships kind of fall where they may?
Yes.
Yeah.
like I would say, because I think about this, right? And when I'm doing my thing, I just kind of do my thing. You know what I mean? Like when you're doing your thing, you just do your thing. But what I don't want to be is insensitive to it. Does that make sense? So like, sure. I check myself, I think about it, you know what I mean? And I got my reasons for why I do what I do, and then at the end of the day, I'm making up a story and I'm trying to make a good one. You know what I mean? And hopefully I can do it in a way that's not insensitive to anyone. It's certainly never been intended to be insensitive to anyone, right? And like, I would assume if I was reading a book by a woman, she probably knows a little bit more about women than I do, right? And I think that holds true across all those categories. If I'm reading a book that's, you're gonna have a little bit truer, closer sense. And yeah, so like I have a little bit of a probably truer sense for some of my boy main characters, though I try really hard to get everybody right as I can.
No goblins were harmed during the writing of this. You had a question?
Yeah, I think Brandon was the one who said something about having these experiences be positive, and I guess my counter to that would be, wouldn't that preclude the idea of villains? Because villains are just as important to a story as protagonists or people who are. Do you see what I'm talking about?
So, but yeah, but help me.
I guess you were talking about if you're going to put, like, say, a non-white, or if you write a female character, you want it to be a positive addition.
Oh yeah. I don't mean like I'm sorry. I don't mean it can't be a villain. I don't mean it has to be like this person's so wonderful because they're Chinese or whatever. I would just want to make the character feel real. Like to have a bad guy be whatever race or whatever gender, heck yeah, sure. Like I could have the big bad in the story. It could be a woman or it could be whatever. I'm totally cool with that. Like I just want it to be like feel like an actual woman or feel
I guess
like,
I was just, yeah, I guess the word positive just was kind of weird.
yeah, you were chewing on that, but I didn't intend to end that way.
Yeah, I mean,
Not insensitive.
the pedestal is as damaging as any insult,
That's
so
true.
you got to be careful.
All right, you had a question right here.
We talked a lot about men writing women, but could we talk about mistakes women make when they write from the point of view of a man?
What? Fighting scenes. I think the question was, we've talked a lot about men writing women because, you know, they're the panelists.
I'm a dude.
He's a guy, yeah. But the question is, what about mistakes that women make in writing men characters? And, you know, I think everything they've said is absolutely true. When I said, the book that came out last April, not this past April, but, you know, in 2018, was first person, entire 120,000 words from the perspective of a guy. An Amish man who loses his wife. And so, you know, but that was my 32nd book. And so when I first started out, I think I worried about it a lot. Now, I don't. I mean, it's like, this is my character. And, you know, I was far more concerned about writing an Amish character, because I don't know anything about that, than I was about writing a man. But, you know, as a man with PTSD, I know about PTSD. I know certain things about him, you know. Now, are there things I would stay away from? You know, I'm trying to think, well, what it was that I wrote that my husband said, no, we would never think that, and I can't. But, you know, men don't tend to be overly gushy. That's not saying no man is never overly gushy, because
Right.
there are men that are gushy like women are. But I think you just have to envision the man character that you're trying to write, and then stay true to that character. You know?
I also think you have, again, we've had a male-dominated culture for so long. There's so many examples to draw from. So find your Cary Grant if you want to go that direction, or your Oldman or something. I think I have very, except the only time I've ever run into a problem is that I read a book where every man was the villain. And I think that there was an axe to grind there.
Yeah, this is a woman hater book
Yeah,
right
yeah.
here. Huh? You had a question right here, I think.
More of a comment. Those people who, when they're writing, are worried about the criticism for getting it wrong, worry more about not offending than worrying about what comes back from it. So if you get it wrong, listen, do better, apologize, honest apology, you know, from the heart. Don't worry as much about being criticized for getting it wrong. Worry more about getting it right than being criticized for getting it wrong.
That's a very good point, and I got to tell you, one time I got it wrong, and it was a tiny little bitty comment in one of those sister books, and the girl's walking up and she sees a dog that's like, you know, on a leash and held by a hunky guy, because that's the kind of book it is, and she says, yeah, it looks friendly, but pit bulls wag their tails too. I had gotten so much flack from pit bull lovers. And this book came out in 2008, and I still get, and I'm like, please, Mr. Publisher, would you let me edit that comment out? Because I apologize all over the place. But, you know, sometimes these books, they're in libraries, and they're on, you know, so yeah, you're right, try your best to get it right, but then it is what it is. You had a question.
It's hard to write from a place of complete fear, right? Or you
Or
can
your
never
book
write
is gonna
anything.
stick.
Yeah.
What was your question?
I've been blessed to have experiences with all natures of beings and sexuality and everything, so I'm really lucky that way. But there's a lot of great movies you can watch to understand all that, right?
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, black people, Asian people, whatever. But my question is, or my thought, we're moving now into a place where young men, young women, millennials and younger, they don't think like most of the characters and the arcs that we've dealt with. They are more sensitive, they are more hip, they are more aware, they're more conscious. So now we're looking at creating characters that most people aren't used to.
You know what? That's why these folks right here are the next generation of writers.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You're going to write characters that are going to appeal to the next generation of readers. We have about 1 minute, so I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to say a wrap-up or an advice or just say goodbye.
I'll see the mystery panel at 5 and the book
Oh, yeah, I'll be
signing
there. I'll
at
be there.
7.
I'll be at the mystery, yeah.
7 somewhere. And it's going to be great. Come buy my books. I got them all. Bring a lot of money. I'm going to charge extra.
I have books too.
And love you guys. Thanks for coming.
Love you. Thank you, Brandon. Get up.
Oh, and I'll be at the book signing too tonight, and yeah, my books are fun if you haven't tried them. And remember, like, whether it's a boy or a girl, write people, and that's a good starting point, right?
Yeah.